Vilnius, the capital of Lithuania. We're at a film screening organised by the Jewish Culture Club. I would like to express my deepest appreciation for the support of the Lithuanian Jewish community. I came to Lithuania from Australia for the first time in 1997 to meet my 93-year-old great-uncle Chatzkel and to film his story. Uncle Chatzkel, I'm your great-nephew Rodney from Australia.
Рад видеть вас, моих близких родственников.
In 1997, and now I've returned to show the documentary about his life. The audience tonight are vestiges of the once thriving Litvak or Lithuanian Jewish community. Like my great-uncle Chatzkel, the elderly people here are all survivors of the Holocaust. I thought I was making a film about memory and the past, but the traumatic events of nearly 60 years ago are now front-page news in Australia. The Lithuanian government has asked the Australian government for information about an alleged war criminal. He's an Australian citizen named Antanas Gudelis. Aged 88, he's lived in Adelaide, South Australia since 1949. His haven is in the suburb of Prospect, in this house. Gudelis was investigated by Australia's Special Investigations Unit for War Crimes until it was shut down in 1992. There was a lot of evidence, but not enough at the time to lay criminal charges. And since 1992, there's been no further investigation. But in Lithuania, I found people who'll never forget Gudelis.
Australijoje, matot, jis dabar gyvena Australijoje, Gudelis. Ir ten žmonės abejoja, ar jis iš tikrųjų šaudė žmonės, ar gal...
Šaudė ir nėr ko čia ir kalba, kad nešauda žmonių. Tegul mani nuvaža, tenoj. Tik tai, kad aš nepaeinu. Tai aš pasakyčiau, aš jom akis va, pasakyčiau, tu mūsų suėmei.
Australia is the only Western country to which many Nazi collaborators emigrated after World War II, which to date has failed to denaturalize, deport, expel, extradite, or convict a single Nazi war criminal. That is not true of any other country to which large numbers of Nazis emigrated. This is the country that wants to host the Olympics. This is the country that will host the Olympics. So brotherhood, harmony, and Nazi war criminals?
These charred remains of a Torah scroll belonged to a community amongst Lithuania's 250,000 Jews. But in just 3 years from 1941, 94% of them were murdered, a higher percentage killed even than in Germany. To find out more about Antanas Gudelis, I went to Tel Aviv to meet the chairman of the Association of Lithuanian Jews in Israel, Joseph MELAMED.
I saw with my own eyes what happened in Lithuania. All my family was killed by Lithuanians.
So far, his association has confirmed 12,000 Lithuanians directly involved in the killings, with estimates of up to 23,000. Antanas Gudelis is documented as being involved in the towns of Kaunas and Kupiskis.
940 near Kaunas. Here also Gudelis, Antanas, he was in Kupiskis. He was one of the heads of these bandits who murdered the Kupiskis Jews.
To the best of your knowledge, he was quite a senior person.
He was a senior person, of course, he was a lieutenant, but he was probably the head of the whole operation. The Lithuanians are not going to sue and to bring anybody to a real trial, because the moment you will bring a man like Gudelis, you will bring to trial, then all the world will know what the Lithuanians have done really during the war. And this, of course, the Lithuanians are not interested in it, because the Lithuanians are still denying, till now, also all the documents, they have all the documents, the Lithuanians are still denying the guilt of the Lithuanians, of the murderers.
Lithuania was independent between the wars, but in 1940, Germany and Russia divided Poland, and Russia occupied the Baltic states. Antanas Gudelis was in the Lithuanian army, which became part of the Soviet army. On June 22, 1941, the Germans invaded Lithuania. They were widely welcomed as liberating the country from the communists. Even before the Germans were established, the pogroms began. Lithuanian militias, known as white armbands, began massacring Jews all over the country. That their own countrymen participated in the killings still fills many Lithuanians with horror. As a young girl, this Christian woman worked for a Jewish family.
Ой, я insistati, va tataini, buvo nuogi, ir ant maži, ant dideli, ant gyvi, vienu būdu užkasti buvo. Oi, kaip reikia, kaip paimagavo, devulio, net va čia buvo girdėti.
Professor Conrad Quit was historical advisor to Australia's Special Investigations Unit, which investigated alleged war criminals until it was closed down. He has a German translation of a 1967 trial in Kupiškis of 5 war criminals. Had he been in Lithuania, Antanas Gudelis would certainly have faced charges at this trial.
From the witness statements, we know that Gudelis, as well as other soldiers, had deserted the Red Army immediately after the beginning of the war, and that he had hid in the deep forest surrounding Kupiškis.
According to the evidence, Gudelis took command of these deserters, who were formed into an auxiliary police battalion, also known as a punitive squad.
Their task was quite simple. They were used to cleanse Kupiški and the environment of Kupiškis of Jews, communists, and other elements regarded as hostile to the Germans and to the Lithuanians. There were some 42 witnesses called in to give evidence. And there was one particular witness, a defendant, who testified, and I quote from the protocol, "I once met Lieutenant Gudelis and other soldiers. The following day, Gudelis ordered all soldiers to come to the headquarters. When we went to the headquarters, Gudelis told us that we were subordinated to him."
In other words, Gudelis was in charge.
Gudelis was the commanding officer of that particular killing squad.
With the passing of time, most of the Lithuanian witnesses are now gone, but the documents still exist. In Lithuania, the government has not yet filed charges against Gudelis, despite incorrect Australian media reports that it has. The chief prosecutor has merely opened a charge file and is investigating. He tells me Australia has been helpful, sending these materials from our defunct Special Investigations Unit, or SIU. Gudelis had admitted to the SIU being in Kaunas and Kupiskis, but no more than that.
This is very important information.
And this is statements of witnesses on video?
Yes, yes, yes. In the paper and the tapes, interview and audio tapes.
Egzekucijos buvo vykdomos keletą kartų per savaitę pagal, reiškia, per dieną, ne per savaitę, pagal iš anksto karo komendanto liovės atrinktus sąrašus, žmonių sąrašus.
The chief prosecutor's boss is the Prosecutor General. He's keen to assure me of the government's commitment.
Iš kitos pusės aš norėčiau, kad mes vienreikšmiai tarpusavėje suprastume, kad jokių abejonių negali kilti nei dėl Lietuvos prokuratūros, nei apskritai dėl Lietuvos pozicijos, kad karo nusikaltimai, genocido nusikaltimai ir išimtinai kalbant apie Holokausto nusikaltimus, kad jie turi būti ištirti. Ir iš kitos pusės, kad už tai atsakinga pirmiausia Lietuva. Nes mes turime Lietuvoje padarytus nusikaltimus, todėl negali būti kalbos.
Today, not a single Nazi war criminal has been put on trial in Lithuania, despite the fact that at least 9 Nazi collaborators who had escaped to the United States after participating in war crimes in Lithuania, and against whom the United States government had initiated legal proceedings, have returned to Lithuania in recent years. Not a single one has sat one day in jail. And I think that really says a lot.
Seni žmonės, aš nekalbu apie kraštutinės kokias bausmės, tuo labiau tai yra teismo klausimas. Aš visiškai nekalbu apie tai, kad mes dabar turim šaudyti. Bet turi būti pasakyta, kad jie kalti, kad jie padarė tos nusikaltimus. O kokia bus bausmė, koks jos dydis, tai visai kitas klausimas.
Cynics argue that Lithuania is only making a show of concern because it wants the goodwill of the United States and Israel. Yet there has been progress in acknowledging the past, hidden under the Soviet regime. Successive Lithuanian presidents have apologized and reflected about the past.
The destruction of the Jews that took place during the war was a great suffering to Lithuania. Lithuanian citizens were murdered, and a horrible crime was committed to the Jews.
Across Lithuania, there are over 240 identified sites of mass murder. This is just one of them. In the forest of Ponare, outside Vilnius, about 100,000 people were killed. 30,000 accused communists and sympathizers, and 70,000 Jews. Where memorials existed under the Soviet regime, they referred to the dead merely as Soviet citizens who died at the hands of Nazis. Since independence in 1990, new memorials do acknowledge the predominantly Jewish victims, but the perpetrators are coyly referred to as local helpers of the Nazis, not Lithuanians.
There is a sort of a tradition of apologetic history in Lithuania. We were the heroes, or we were the sufferers, we were the innocent victims.
MARKAS ZINGERIS, a Jewish writer and poet, is on a new government commission evaluating the crimes of the Nazi and Soviet occupations.
And the mature truth about it, I suppose, that there were those who pulled the trigger, there were those who saved, there were feasts of unheard courage, and there were brutality of unheard of rage and intensity. And that's why historians have to look at it, and international lawyers have to qualify the findings by international standards.
When I first filmed here, Markas showed me the 9th Fort in Kaunas. Along these walls, some 70,000 people were murdered. Markas's family is commemorated in the fort's museum. The prosecutor's archives show Gudelis was here in Kaunas from July to December 1941, and in August took command of the 7th Auxiliary Police Service Battalion, used by the Germans for killings. German records show that on the 29th of October at the 9th Fort in Kaunas, they murdered 2,007 Jews, 2,920 Jewesses, and 4,273 Jewish children. In brackets, it states, cleansing the ghetto of superfluous Jews. Mass killings in Kaunas continued, including people brought from elsewhere in Europe. Though never recorded here, the executions were similar to others photographed in Eastern Europe. With so many killed, it's not surprising that there were few witnesses. But I found witnesses in the first place where Gudelis commanded a killing squad, the town of Kupiškis. In Yiddish, it was called Kupišok. Jewish Kupišok is no more. As in all the other shtetls or towns, the Jewish houses were occupied by locals and their contents distributed. Synagogues converted for more practical uses. The Yiddish schools taken over or abandoned. The director of the Kupiškis Museum, Mr. Jasaitis, apologizes for his meager record of the Jewish community. A handful of photos, a picture of the old synagogue, not much more.
This was Jewish families, these ones.
He recently discovered a list of Jews executed in Kupiškis. Compiled after the war from people's memories, it's by no means complete, but here alone are over 800 names and their ages. 35, 32, 4, 1, 16, and so on. The director is familiar with the events of 1941 and agrees to show us around. Down this road, the Jews stumbled to their death. In 1941, this was the atheist cemetery, unconsecrated ground, where Gudelis' squad murdered the Jews of Kupišok.
Šaudyti, tai šaudė čia va tam toj pakalnytėje. Čia grioviai buvo, į griovį šaudė, o čionai. Šitas buvo visas.
The recent memorial reads, on this spot, the Nazi henchmen and their helpers in 1941 killed approximately 1,000 residents of Kupiškis. The majority of the killed ones were Jews. There's no mention of Lithuanians, just the oblique reference to helpers. It's as if they don't know, or don't want to say, that the murderers were Lithuanian citizens. Across town is the old Jewish cemetery. When I inquire why there are so few graves, I'm told that in 1980, the Soviets bulldozed them to build this water tower. Nearby is the old soldiers' barracks, where the Soviet army deserters gathered.
Jie čia buvo laikomi, tame tarpe buvo čia ir Gudelis. O kada prasidėjo okupacija, kai atėjo vokiečiai, tai tada ir čia dislokavosi tas baudžiamasis batalionas, nežinau kaip jį pavadinti iš tikrųjų, tų žudikų. Ir čia taip pat ir jie buvo. O čia, tai aš kaip pasakojau, čia toje vietoje buvo šaudomi lietuviai, rusai, čia tarybiniai aktyvistai, komjaunuoliai, partiniai, nors tuo metu komunistų gal nebuvo, revoliucionieriai, visokie pogrindininkai.
When the Germans arrived in Kupiškis, they appointed a local German school teacher, Werner Löw, as mayor and chief of police.
Löw also gave orders that the killing squad was permitted to wear the old national uniforms of the Lithuanian army, marked with Hakenkreuz symbols, with swastika armbands. Löw was also in charge of drawing up the lists of those who had to be executed. But it was up to the punitive killing squad, headed by Gudelis, to carry out the orders given by the mayor and head of the police, by Löw.
In July 1941, Bronislavas Urbonos was 19. He was arrested and held for 2 weeks in the Kupiškis jail. Every day, he saw the chief of police, Werner Löw, and Antanas Gudelis, with a list of people who'd been arrested.
Liovė sudarinėjo sąrašus, Gudelis skaitė. Bet Gudelis tuo metu...
Jis visai šonį stovė. Pavyzdžiui, aš parodysiu, galit biškį dabar išjungti, aš parodysiu, kaip būdavo. Jis šonį stovė kaip stalas. Duris atsidarė ir atėjo komendantas. Parabelis ranko. Na, ir tas skaita, kaip lakė, tuoj pirmiausia ten daiktų šerį, parabelį. Tenais jau pastinko su šautuvais ir nusirengti. Nurengė ir varo. O,
skaitė Gudelis. Ten, kur stalas, skaitė Gudelis.
Gudelis.
Jo. O su parabelumi įeidavo Liovė.
Liovė.
Mr. Urbonos was fortunate. He was released.
Man ir mano draugų. Tai taip, to ranko padavė, to ranko parabelį laiką. Dovanokit vyrai, jis taip užsikirtamas kalbėje, pasiliovė. Dovanokit vyrai, kad aš jums palaikiu, man geriau vienas kitas nekalts nušaut, kaip kalts palaisti. Va, ją žodžiai.
Mr. Urbonos shows us the Kupiškis jail where he was held.
Kokiu būdu jūs kasdien beveik matydavot Gudelį? Kaip jis ateidavo, ar jūs išvesdavo?
Vakarį, kaip ateidavo sušaudyt, tai jis su sąrašu ateina. Atsistoja, va čionai, kaip gali pasakyti, va, prie šitą langą prisinasi duris toliau, jis sąrašus skaita, komendantas pirmų pasveikinimų duoda, tas sąrašus skaita, čia buvo tokie, va tokia aukštuma, gultai. Visi sustojom, gultų stovi. Pašaukia pavardį, šokį ir lakį, kad mažiau gaut pakaušin. Čia tai mes taip skaitydavom, kad jei buvo ir palaistų iš čia, jau nebegyvensi žmogus. Vienas kitų vilkti išvelkas. Baisiai žiauris buvo vaizdas. Valgio mirusią duonas. Gulėm va, ant narų. Šalimo žmogus numirė. Tai jis ir aš ją paėmiau per pusę pasidaliną. Va, kokiu duonu prisėjau valgį.
In July 1941, Mrs. Bartusevičiūtė was 9 years old. She tells us Gudelis and others arrested her father and 2 brothers, who were then executed.
Daugiau žydelių negu kad kupiškėnų. Daugiau buvo. Ir žinot, pasakysiu, va, Itka, Etka, tai mes buvom draugės. Jie gyveno, va, Kolvyje turėjo. Ir va, priešais mumi gyveno. Tai va, labai su jom suveidavo, su Intku, su Etku, nu, su žydel kitam. Buvo paėmys, jie jau, Spranskevičius doktoras, buvo paėmys Intku ir Etku. Ir kas tai, iki šalia žuvį, kom reikia? Iki šalia žuvį kažkas. Intku ir Etku. Paėmės našam.
Sorry.
Oi, baisu buvo, pamyslikit, čia už žydskapių, tai šauda mūsų žmonas, jau lietuvius, o žydelius šauda und laisvamaniai, kaip dabar kapai yra.
Ryšium su tom žudynėm Antanas Gudelis.
Buvo.
O ką jūs prisimenat apie jį, kažką, ką jis veikia, ką jis darė?
Šauda žmonas.
Nu, ką dar prisimenat tokia apie jį, ką nors?
Nebegaliu. Biški. Aš per negaliu žinot kalbant, man sunku labai sunku kalbant.
The 1967 trial in which Gudelis was cited was held in the old Kupiškis synagogue, then a house of culture. It's now a library. The museum director was present when the verdicts were announced.
Nu, škia buvo susidomėjimas didelis tuo teismo, škia buvo pilna salė, kiek prisimenu, pilna salė žiūrovų, tai ten galėjo būt kokie 300, tai tikrai galėjo būti, jeigu nedaugiau, nemažiau 2 dienų. Ir aš prisimenu, kai buvo skaitomas nuosprendis, tai reiškia, tai nuosprendį sutiko salėje, reiškia, plojimais.
Of the 5 defendants, 3 were sentenced to death, 2 received 15 years imprisonment. If Gudelis had been available for this trial, he would have either faced death or long imprisonment, but he was living safely in Adelaide.
And with apparent immunity. I try to speak to him, but his wife barely opens the door.
Is that possible to talk to you?
No, then I don't go and talk to other solicitors.
I beg your pardon?
You can go to solicitor.
To the solicitor? I see, so your husband wanted to talk to me? I'll just...
He cannot talk because he's dead.
Is it possible to talk to you at all?
I have nothing to speak with you. Sorry.
Thank you.
She refers me to their solicitor, who says that war crimes are the big end of town, and it's not in her client's interest to participate in this program. Antanas Gudelis remains a free Australian citizen.
Part of the tragedy of what happened in Australia was that the Special Investigations Unit was closed down just at the time when the archives in Eastern Europe were opening up. And these are the archives where there is considerable documentation regarding the crimes committed by the people living in Australia. Case in point, Antanas Gudelis. Now, this information was made available to the Australian Federal Police, but unfortunately, they did not take any steps, and the reasons for that are simple. Lack of expertise, lack of resources, and no political will to proceed. You put it all together, and there's a terrible result. No prosecutions.
The American, Canadian, and British stance has been to strip suspected war criminals of their citizenship and deport them.
We have succeeded to date in denaturalizing more than 60 participants in Nazi crimes of persecution, and we've removed from the United States more than 50. We are, in fact, as active now as we've ever been. We have 18 cases in courts throughout the United States. Some 250 people are under investigation.
Australia has refused to change its tactics, adopt the denaturalization and deportation, which has proven so successful elsewhere, and therefore they remain totally unsuccessful. A very, very sad story.
Even if the Lithuanian government eventually requests extradition of Gudelis, it's unclear whether Australia would consider it. But will Lithuania even file charges? The Prosecutor General, Mr. Perpetrator, tells me they're looking for more specific evidence.
Tiesa, tie liudininkai, tų liudininkų problema yra ta Lietuvoje, kad jie negali mums pasakyti sušaudytųjų pavardžių. Jie patvirtina patį šaudimo faktą. Na, tai yra kažkas yra tokių, kurie matė, kad buvo vedami, pavyzdžiui, žydai, kaip ir kiti Lietuvos piliečiai, ir nebe Gudelio dalyvavimo, kaip ir nebe kitų. Tačiau dėl amžiaus, dėl laiko, dėl matyt daugelio priežasčių, mes šiandieną neturime tokio liudininko, kuris galėtų pasakyti varytųjų sušaudymui pavardės. Va tai yra mums didžiausia problema šioje byloje.
But in Kupiškis, we filmed the names of over 800 executed Jews. Surely this evidence is sufficient.
Arba kitaip tariant, jeigu kalbėtume, na, pavyzdžiui, apie Kupiškį, mes žinome pavardės ir žydų, kurie buvo nužudyti, tačiau mums būtina išskaidrinti pavardės tų žydų, kurių nužudymą mes galėtume tiesiogiai susijęti būtent su Gudeliu, o ne tai, kad su kažkuo tai kitu.
I find this a most remarkable statement, and particularly coming from a chief prosecutor. If this statement would have been a principle of legal proceedings, of war crimes investigation and war crimes trial, hardly any war crimes trial could have been conducted.
It's a human being, and the human being has been murdered. It's always advisable, it's always preferable to have the identities of the victims, but it's a human being, and the human being has been murdered. That should be sufficient.
What do you say to people who assert that it's too late for justice to be served by pursuing these cases?
It's of course not too late. It's too soon to give up. To give up sends the worst message to the would-be perpetrators of the future, the worst message to survivors who've been looking to the governments of the world for some justice. It's certainly not too late.
The accused are too old. They're probably unfit to stand trial. The witnesses are unreliable or dead. It's too late for justice to be served. What's past is past. It all happened a long time ago, far away. There are arguments for doing nothing. But here, where the blood was spilt, are they adequate in the face of the crimes committed? Despite the distance, the time elapsed, and the tortuous legalities, we remain connected to this terrible past with responsibility to the victims and to ourselves.
Justice has to be done. The truth has to come out. And we have to know exactly what this man did. This is A. B. These people like Gudelis, he has shot, they have shot people who were much older than himself now. There were rabbis in Kupiskis, rabbis and other people who were 90 years old. They're almost already dying almost. They're old and they killed them. Now, why shouldn't a man like this go to trial?